Scott, I'll go ahead and let you start off. If you want to tell us a little bit about why you're involved with the Cannabis Amendment and what you are trying to achieve.
So the reason I really got involved in this, I'm a combat veteran with a PTSD diagnosis, and even before it was made legal medically in Ohio, I was finding relief from it, and but at the time it was all black market. It was, we were getting crappy weed with lots of seeds, and so I decided to put some of those seeds to use and remove myself from the black market. I started growing my own, and then one day I got caught, and I found myself in a situation where my own government was charging me with a crime for treating a condition that they were responsible for giving me in the first place. So so that's kind of how I got involved in the I really wanted to be involved in this. It seemed to me that fighting for my freedom or fighting for our freedom is not the same thing as slaughtering people for oil. So I learned that day, the real threat is not anyone in Iraq. It's our own government. That's the real threat to our freedoms. And so to me, this is what I can do to actually do what I set out to do in the first place, which is, help us all become a little more free.
Wow.
So
awesome.
That's the story.
Yeah, that's great. Ryan, would you like to give us a little bit of background on your stance on this particular issue and maybe prohibition itself?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if I can tell the story any better than Scott. I think, I think what Scott said in particular is what we're trying to do. I think the fact is that there are too many people who are impacted, very negatively by prohibition laws. And I think exactly what Scott said, we really are about a land where we want to be able to own our own bodies and make our own choices. And I think prohibition takes all of that away. And whether it's marijuana or whether it's something far more substantial, I think the same rules apply. We need to be able to have safe commerce to use the substances of our choice. And we need good education about how to use them so that the drugs we use are safe, and that we're able to go get them at a store with someone who can tell us the recommended dosage and what to do in the event we have an addiction or we have a crisis related to that. But with prohibition, none of those things are possible. And so I think one of the things that we really want to push and support is this idea that adults in America have the right to make their own choices, and that to be able to have a system where they can do that safely and legally, and address some other concerns like getting the drug trade out of neighborhoods, and getting law enforcement out of these personal life decisions. So I think Scott, you said it way better than I could. So, but I think just from a policy perspective, that's what we're really talking about.
Well, I've found being, I'm a legal medical patient now in Ohio, but I further educated myself on this and looked into the history of prohibition and all this, and just found that really we've got almost a century now of just blatant lies on the subject, and it sure would be nice to have an honest conversation with our government on drug policy, but it seems that we can't do that the way things are. So.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that people can kind of tell something that's their own right is to think about if they could go out into a field, and if they could do it by themselves, it means it's their right. So if it doesn't impact anybody else, then we know that it's something that we can do and it's our right. And so when we come across these laws where people, I think have good intentions about, trying to raise awareness about making drug use safe, we still have to know that it's still an individual right that we really can't be taken away. And so I think it's important that we have these conversations and that we question those laws, and not just question them, but I think that we overturn them because they're not appropriate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I saw your stance is more, you're kind of for decriminalizing all drugs, aren't you? Kind of more the Portugal model. Is that pretty much what I read in your
Well, I'd be
book
lying
there?
if I said I know exactly what all the ins and outs are of the Portugal model, but I do think that, you know, in terms of marijuana, I think all across the board, I think drug use is something that is an individual personal decision, and I think the same things apply when we're talking about safe commerce and legal commerce. I think that really applies across the whole spectrum for me.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I don't really see where the government has a right to step in these instances. So I'm glad you're taking that position. Yeah, as far as the amendment goes, I'm pretty happy with it. When I first read it, the We Grow Ohio amendment is very it's very short, very to the point compared to other state amendments. There's no set plant limit, or you can't have a dispensary within X number of feet of a school. None of those rules are in there. They're all kind of all left up to the state to decide on the commercial aspect of that. But as far as personal use and home grow and home processing, home use in any method you see fit, the amendment is pretty straightforward, and it basically just says you have the right to do it, and it cannot be infringed upon. So I think we've got a good amendment this time. There's no stipulations where only certain people are allowed to get into the market, like we had last time with issue 15. So I think we'll do okay. Or was it issue 3? It was issue 3 in 2015. I'm sorry, where we had that. But I think we've got a good one this time around, and it's all grassroots based. There's no company backing this up. So I think if we can get the volunteers to get it on the ballot, I think we'll get her passed this time around.
Well, and I think one of the things, and just for anybody who hasn't seen it, the really great thing about that amendment that you all are working on is that it really starts with the premise of individual freedom. It really starts with the idea that adults have the right to make these decisions, and it really starts with the idea that the state's role, if any, really is about safe and legal commerce, so that we can get those substances, in a way that makes the most sense. Really, I think that is the role of the government. It's why we created the government to begin with. Is we said, we want channels to manage disputes, or we want quality control. Those are the things that the government should be used for, rather than prohibition. I think the way that this amendment is worded in particular does a really good job. So I think it could really be a model, not only in Ohio, but in other states, who are looking, in particular, at legalizing marijuana.
Yeah, and I think it puts us in a position where we can force the other side to have to defend certain things. Like, okay, why do we have to have a limit of only 6 plants? What, defend that? what happens at 7 plants that that the world comes unglued in your mind? I mean, so
going on like past things. So you talked about 2015. The problem with that issue was a lot of people were feeling as though there were only 2 people that were going to benefit from the situation, and there were too many rules. Again, in 2016, we had something that it speaks more on prohibition than it does marijuana, but it was the Drug and Criminal Justice Policies Initiative. And that seemed to have failed for another reason, and that being people were afraid that prohibition and freeing the criminals there was going to be criminals pouring into the streets, and the justice system was going to be overloaded, and there were going to be all these issues if we were able to pass it. Another problem is that people believe that people going to jail or people being punished, that's what leads to people getting off heroin, getting off meth, things like that. So if you would like to talk a little bit more maybe about your opinions on that particularly, either the prohibition model and why that really doesn't lead to people stopping, at least not at the rate that people believe.
Are you asking me or Ryan?
Whoever.
I mean, speaking to like the heroin epidemic, you know, we've all seen this in our neighborhoods when someone overdoses. There's two teams that pull up. There's an ambulance and usually one or two cop cars. One team is there to help, the other is not. It's really that simple. As far as the concerns of letting nonviolent criminals out of prison, I don't see the downside in letting people out of prison who shouldn't have been there in the first place. I'm not sure what what more there is to defend there. It seems like the decent thing to do, the only human thing to do, really. I don't know, Ryan, do you have anything more to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, Scott, I think you you say it very well. I think one of the things we have to remember is that people who use drugs are not criminals, and they were never criminals. And so these were just made-up policies that some people said, we don't like the drugs you do. And I think the thing about drug use in America in general is that people are not inherently against drugs. People take psychiatric medication, people drink caffeine, coffee, tea, sugar. Most people in America do some kind of drug every single day. And so when we're talking about these drugs, we're talking about some drugs that some people don't like. And so what they did is pass a law that turned normal human behavior into quote-unquote criminal behavior. So I agree. These are people who should have never been in jail to begin with. These are people who are simply exercising their rights. I think the challenge, of course, is when somebody does use a drug and it does lead to some other kind of issue. So if there's an overdose or if there's an addiction, do we have the means to support somebody going through that? I mean, I think we do, but I think jail is not the answer. When someone says, jail is what saved my life, what they're really saying is intervention saved my life. And so that intervention does not have to be a jail cell. There can be other kind of intervention. I think what we need to do is to improve our mental health and addiction services treatments so that they work better than a cage. So that it's not the thing that changes somebody's life. So I think, when people have that argument, it's really just kind of a partial understanding of what the whole issue is. So I think, it's not something that we need to be concerned about in terms of keeping things the way they are, because the way things are right now really are destroying families, it's destroying individuals, and it costs so much to do it. So, and I think that noise means that we are exactly right what we're saying.
Yep. That's how I interpreted it too. But no, you made a good point. There really needs to be a discussion about, what is prison really the best way to do this? And I don't think you have to ponder that very long to come up with an answer of no on that. I mean, we can lock people up who have eating disorders and starve them in cages, and that will help them, get off of their food addiction. But it's completely insane and inhumane to even consider such an option. So why are we doing it for, other addictions? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, some of it also has to do with understanding, the role of addictions and really what is the best treatment model. I think one of the things, different types of addictions, can happen in different ways. And so, sometimes you have a person who says, you know what, I'm just going to try meth, and they become addicted, right? So it's this very, kind of non-intentional thing. But by and large, when somebody's at a point where they say, I'm going to do this heavy drug, usually there's something else going on. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget, when somebody's going through something like that, the drug is really kind of a crutch. And you wouldn't walk up to somebody who's walking down the street with a broken leg using a crutch and kick it out from under them and say, I hope this makes you heal faster.
Sure.
Which, is essentially what we do, in our current addiction treatment system. So I think those are the things that we really need to think about. Our mental health and our addiction services really need to be, kind of tailored to not a crime of justice, a crime and punishment model, but really towards a health and healing model. So I think that really has to be a big part of our, kind of freedom and legalization efforts.
Well said.
And a lot of the information that we spoke about as far as the We Grow Ohio is all over the internet. There's a lot of Facebook groups where you can volunteer, carry a petition.
Yeah, if you get on Facebook and look for it's Legalize Ohio 2021 is one of the groups, and then We Grow Ohio is the other. I think either one will get you into the mix if you're interested in volunteering for to gather signatures. We need all the help we can get, and just get in contact with one of those two Facebook groups, and they'll get you started.
I can't believe how they're growing. I see we had over 100 people join us in one night. Like
Yeah.
I've seen that post I don't know how many times. So
yeah,
that's
it seems
amazing.
it seems like we're getting about 100 a day at least, it seems. So yeah,
That's fantastic.
it's really growing. So
yeah, well, there's a reason for that.
yeah.
I also wanted to mention Ryan's book, My First 110 Days as President. It can be found online, and a lot of the things that were discussed today as far as why things would work, if there are any questions, can be found there. A new book out, If There Must Be an Enemy, It Is Not the Way, by Ryan. Any other questions about the platform can be found at www.ackerforpresident.com. We're on Facebook and Vimeo as Committee to Elect Ryan Acker, and you can find us on Instagram and Twitter using hashtag Acker2020 or hashtag AllAmericans_Win. And if there are any questions, you can bug me at aj@ackerforpresident.com. Anything else?
I think that's great.
All right, thank you guys.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.